This is an announcement for the entire school. I repeat, this is an announcement for the entire school. I present Mr. Campbell Austin.
Hey.
Should I begin?
Yes.
Sing to our school, forever may she stand, forever sheltering those who love and serve her. Strive for her faith with firm and willing hand, that all hearts are being as we sing out loud. Then sing her name loud and clear, and sing her name loud and clear, and sing loud and clear. Sing unto we'll be there to think of us again. Remembering once long ago we loved and served her. Stroll for her fame, firm and willing hand, with love and devotion to you. Turn and sing farewell loud and clear, and sing farewell loud and clear, and sing loud and clear. Sing unto.
You have touched us all. Thank you, Mr. Austin. That was beautiful. Everyone, now we're gonna begin officially. I'm just gonna ask you to mute yourself, Mr. Austin, just for now, and we'll unmute you again. Thank you so much for that. Welcome to the first virtual Hunter at 466 Lex faculty student reunion. Actually, the first Hunter at 466 Lex reunion, period. We are incredibly honored to have so many former faculty members here with us today, and we're delighted that so many alums are here today to celebrate with faculty during what has been such a difficult period for us individually and collectively. We were supposed to have gathered in person with faculty members here with us today, and we're delighted that so many alums are. Please mute yourselves, folks, because I'm hearing an echo of my voice. We were supposed to have gathered in person 2 nights ago to reminisce about that strange time from the fall of 1970 to the end of 1976, when Hunter College High School was housed in a Midtown office building with few of the amenities of an ordinary high school. So I guess it's fitting that the 466 reunion should be a Zoom reunion with few of the amenities of an ordinary high school reunion. I mean, it doesn't really matter that we're not sitting in an auditorium. We didn't have an auditorium in high school. Do you care that there's no gymnasium for us to meet in? We didn't have one of those either. No cafeteria? All we had were vending machines. And yes, of course, there was a lady who sold knishes. But a Zoom reunion is a positive luxury. You want a drink? It's on the house. And grab something from the refrigerator for yourself too. But there's another benefit to this Zoom reunion in case you haven't noticed. Look around the virtual room, and you can stop spotlighting me, Aniko. Not only are there people here from around the world, New Zealand, Israel, England, to name a few countries, But look at these teachers. There are 20-something faculty members with us today, many of whom could not have attended our in-person reunion. Campbell Austin, and if Ann Eberlin Rausch gets here, are coming from North Carolina. Dr. Weckerly from California. Dee Dee Condon, Thomas Levinson from Florida. Jerry Gelormini Jamola from Texas. Irv Steinfink from Boston. Rosemary Laster from the Upper West Side. This is great. But even this Zoom reunion could be better than the one we're having, right? And that's where you come in. In true Hunter fashion, some of you have stepped up to the plate to offer opinions and suggestions and even more opinions. A few days ago, within a few hours, we heard from two classmates. The first one suggested that we tweak the breakout sessions to add sessions for those who shared similar interests in high school, like an interest in music or theater, for example. A great idea, but not doable. When I heard that a classmate of hers had sent an email the same afternoon to say that adding breakout sessions was just too much, I knew that today, our plan for today was perfect. We had hit a Hunter sweet spot. The first part of the reunion, during which the entire gathering hears from each of the teachers, is being broadcast via Facebook Live to the official Hunter College High School Alumni Association Facebook page, and hopefully to the 466 Lexington Facebook group as well. Once we have heard from each faculty member, we will stop broadcasting live and head to smaller breakout sessions with 1 to several faculty members at a time. We will divide you by year of graduation, except that year of graduation at Hunter doesn't necessarily mean the year in which you graduated. I'll explain the breakout sessions in more detail just before they start. But for now, before I introduce the teachers, I'd like to ask all alums to rename yourselves on Zoom, if you can, by adding your year of graduation in front of your name, except in Hunter 466 fashion, not necessarily your real year of graduation. Let me explain. So listen up. If you entered in 65, no problem. Put 1971 and then your name. If you entered in 66, put 1972 and then your name. If you entered in 67, put 1973 and then your name. If you entered in 1968, please listen up. Put the letter A in front of 1974. So A 1974 and then your name. So for example, A 1974 Joy Hecht. If you entered in 1969, put B 1974 and then your name. So example, B 1974 Lori Ginsburg. If you entered with me in 1970, just put 1975. You entered in 71, put 1976. You entered in 72, put 77. And listen up if you entered in 73, put 1979. If you entered in 1974, put 1980. In 75, put 1981. And if you entered in 1976, put 1972 and then your name. If you're having trouble renaming yourself on Zoom, please use the chat bubble and the drop-down message, and you can send a private message to me or Eniko Horvath, and hopefully we will get you renamed. It's for the breakout sessions. And now I would like to introduce our guests of honor, the former faculty of 466 Lex. We're going to start.
And before you do that, why don't you tell us how to change our chat names?
Joy, can you do me a favor?
Tell us how to change our chat names and you won't have to do it for all of us.
Eniko, do you want to talk?
Yes, please
There's
tell us right now how to change our chat names, and then you will not get all of us asking you to do it.
Eniko, you there?
Yes, I am here.
I
Say it
screen
again,
share.
Joy.
What?
I just
Okay,
guys,
and
I just said, please tell us how to change
Okay,
our
stop.
chat names.
Joy, do me a favor. Mute yourself. Everyone mute themselves, please.
If you don't know how, Joy and everyone, if you don't know how to rename yourself, just send a message to Anne privately with your year of graduation. That's all.
Tell
Joy's
us, because
saying-
we're all going to send her messages and she won't be able to do it. Tell us, the people who still can't do it, will send her a
I
message.
just did it. I can explain
Excuse me,
it.
right click on your name and then it'll say rename.
Yeah.
Thank you,
But
Xiomara.
But what I don't, that's my
Thank you, that's what we needed to be told.
Wait, but
Okay,
do you,
everybody, listen up. Now I need to tell you something. You must mute yourselves. You just must. If you need to say something, you will have to send a private message at this point because we'll be interrupting our guests of honor. So right now, I'm going to introduce our guests of honor, the former faculty of 466 Lex. Two of them are dialed in. Just give me a second here. And are you all muted yet? I'm hearing people.
What?
Ryan says you need to be present with your driver's license.
And you're muted. I muted everyone, and you have to unmute yourself.
Okay. Anna, are you there? Anna? Anna? We'll come back to Anna. That's fine. Anna, we'll keep checking the waiting room. It's okay. She had some issues where she has to be in two places at once. Okay, we're very, very lucky to have with us Toby Brandreth and Bob Goodman. They're two people, but they're also one. And if you can unmute them.
I just unmuted.
Okay.
Hi, Toby.
Okay, now, we'll hear from the teachers when I call on you, you will unmute you. You may have to click on a button that says accept invitation to unmute yourselves. Please tell us what subject you taught at Hunter and the years that you were there, and then share whatever you'd like with us, something about the 466 Lex experience or Hunter in general, or what you've been doing since you left. You decide, and we'll start with Toby and Bob.
Okay, we'll go separately, I guess. I started in 1971. And I think one of the reasons I succeeded in teaching was because it was at 466, which was a very informal building. So it was a less intimidating to me because I had never contemplated going into teaching. And I could not, I mean, some of the memories, I could not get over the informality of the kids. It was very different than the high school I went to in Maryland. I remember showing a video of film strip once and kids just lined up on the floor. Oh my God, is that me? There was a wonderful informality. At the same time, I was really struck by the sophistication of the girls. I was from Maryland, like a hick town. I was naive, I was young, and I remember telling my mother these kids were like 35-year-old women. But one of the reasons, major reason I succeeded, I think, is because the kids took me in. And I remember one young woman, I don't know if she's here, Jill Coe, showed me how to set up a roll book. She walked me to the subway. A contingent of kids came to me maybe in October and said, we really like your class, but you are being way, way too strict. And I was very touched by that. I was being very strict because the summer before I started, I went to pick up my book, the books that I would be teaching from. I taught biology and physiology, 12th grade and 9th grade. And the lab technician told me, those girls are going to walk all over you. You will never succeed in this school. And he said, I have one piece of advice, don't smile until Christmas. So I didn't. And then this contingent of girls came and told me I should ease up a little. I was very touched by that. I loved teaching at Hunter. I loved biology. I loved how the girls and then eventually the boys just drank it in and asked wonderful questions and got me to go home, and I would look up things, come back and report answers. I loved my colleagues. It was a real family. Marge mentored me, Stacy, Susan Meeker, Fran, and it was just a wonderful experience. Stacy went on sabbatical, so she taught me how to teach the cooking classes, which were in the science department. And Stacy, I want you to know I just made the chili con carne you taught me to teach, which we made at 466 in electric fry pans. Mr. Goodman and I met at Hunter, and we started going out. We kept it a secret. And sure enough, we were on the east side, and a Hunter kid in a bakery, and a Hunter kid tapped us on the shoulder, and she said, Ms. Brandress, Mr. Goodman, aren't you surprised to see me here? And we thought, oh no, she's going to tell the whole school. She was very discreet, didn't tell anybody, or so we thought, until we announced that we were getting engaged, and we found out the whole school knew that we had been going out. But Hunter was wonderful. I left Hunter. I taught until 2003. And then a school here in the neighborhood where our kids went to school in Riverdale, SAR Academy decided to open a high school, and they asked me if I would start the science department here. And I loved Hunter. I did not want to leave. So I said no, but they persisted, and Hunter was very gracious about allowing me to take a leave for a year to start the department, which is what I did, and then extended it for another year because they were just starting out. John Huang, who was he was a junior when I left, and he was supposed to do his ICY project with me. So I told him I was leaving. He said, I'll go with you. And he did. And he helped me set up science labs in a makeshift room in a synagogue here where the school started. I mean, he was wonderful. My students still today use the quizzes he had made up for my SAR kids. And I just spoke to him a couple of months ago because we have to try to figure out how to switch it off of Adobe Flash to a different platform since Flash is going out. But at any rate, and then I ended up staying at SAR. I have always loved Hunter. I always tell my SAR kids about Hunter, and love you all. And I love when kids get in touch with me from the past. Every once in a while, I get a letter, an email, or a call, and it's wonderful. And I miss you all. And I love my colleagues there too.
I'll keep it brief.
Sorry.
Everything that Toby said, I ditto. I just love teaching at Hunter. In 2001, I was offered a position to chair the science department at a school that was just opening up in Great Neck. And I did that for 4 years. So I was at Hunter from 73 until 2001. One of the things that I feel really strongly about, I mean, so many things that I loved about Hunter that I don't even know where to start, but I'll just say one thing. I am so glad that my first teaching experience as a science teacher was in a school that was humanities oriented. I've always felt that it wasn't enough just to be a great, scientist, but you also had to do it from a human standpoint. And I think we see that today. There's so many things that we have to take into consideration. Oh, that's me. Oh no, I look the same. Not really. In any case, so I left Hunter in 2001, and I taught. I chaired the science department at North Shore Hebrew Academy for 4 years, and then Toby and I rejoined forces. Just because I know you're all into these romantic things, I'll just tell you real quickly that I finally got enough nerve to ask Toby to go out in 1977, early 1977, and you know what she said? No. But 11 months later, our desks were back to back in the science office. We were, of course, in the new school building. And about 11 months later, Toby said, maybe we should go out. Nobody was in the office. And that was the best. And a year and a half later, we got married. We have 3 children, all in their 30s. And we have 7 grandchildren who are absolutely adorable. The last one was just born about 6 or 7 weeks ago in April. And things are good, other than the pandemic and all the racial stuff that's going on, we couldn't be happier.
Bob, do you have the picture to show them of?
Oh, I'll show you one picture if you could see this. All right. When we, I think it was 1976 that we packed to move to the new building. And this is a picture of Miss Brandress, myself, Miss Goldsmith, and Helene Balaban, who was the lab technician then. We had these huge boxes that we had to put models in that we were, shipping off to the new building. And so this is a picture of Toby, Marge, myself, and Helene, if you can see it. We were actually in one of those boxes, and someone caught a picture of us.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, everyone. It's great. I was going through all the pictures of everybody and names, and I saw a few that I recognized and remembered, and great just seeing all of you.
Thank you so much, both of you. I know it was difficult for you to make time to come here, so thank you. We really appreciate it. Stay as long as you can, but we understand that you have to go early. I'm going to ask Rosemary Laster to unmute herself. And hopefully that's working. Rosemary, can you talk? Can you push the, great. Just take the icon, unmute yourself, the microphone there, the orange thing that has a bar through it. Just push on that button.
Let's see. Wait a minute. Tell them.
There we go. Okay, great. So just if you can tell us when you taught at Hunter, what you taught, and then anything else, you go with it. And Rosemary Laster.
I taught at Hunter from 1966 to 88. But as I told Anne the other day, when I first encountered Bernard Miller, who I guess was the campus school director for the whole shebang, and he came to a class of mine to observe, and he said, Mrs. Laster, this was on a note, I compare your art as a teacher to the art of de Maupassant. I knew I didn't have to worry about any further problems at Hunter. It was a great place to teach because of marvelously delightful and vigorous students who lapped up everything that you gave them. And I not only enjoyed teaching, but I also enjoyed working on projects with them in the inter-college year, and then later and taught a course then called modestly college literature, and many of them took that. And then of course they also took the exam to get college credit. So it was a very varied experience, which I look back on with great pleasure.
And there is Rosemary. Thank you so much, Rosemary, for that. By the way, Rosemary has a second career as a real estate broker, and I believe she is possibly the only real estate broker in the world who mentions Winston Churchill on her webpage.
So true. And I'm also at the moment doing tutoring for students who are not in school. And if anyone knows somebody who wants to be tutored, I'd be delighted to work with them.
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to ask you, or I'm going to try to mute you now so we can move on to the next person. I think that worked. Yes. Okay. The next person is Dee Condon Thomas Levinson. So you know her by one name or another. And I'm trying to unmute you, Dee. There.
Anyway, I have another name. My last name now is Levinson.
Yes.
And I was at Hunter from 1966 to 86. I married my husband in 82 and we moved to Florida in 87. But I love teaching at Hunter. I love the girls. We put on concerts in the Playhouse. It was just wonderful. And in one of the classes, I didn't have a room. So I used the hallway in front of the elevator, and that was our dance space. So I did enjoy it. Yeah, well, I look better now than I did then. Anyway, had a good time. When I got to Florida, I started working for the Arthritis Foundation for about 15 years, putting on, events so that I could raise money and support the Arthritis Foundation. So I've done that, and that's really good. And that's about it.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
It was wonderful to practice with you Zooming last weekend, and your students are thrilled that you're here. So thank you very much. Now I'm going to try to unmute Susan Meeker here. And Susan, I unmuted you.
Okay.
And if you could just say what you're, there we go.
I was at Hunter from 1966 until 2005.
Oh, wow.
A very long tenure. I was in the social studies department when we were at 466. Eventually, I succeeded the legendary Ira Marienhoff as chair of the department. My memories of 466 to begin with was that I was pregnant most of the first year there, and wondering whether I was going to be sick on the subway getting downtown. And also that when I eventually had my first baby, which was in June of that year, I named her Lauren, and one of my 7th grade students was convinced I had named my daughter after her. That baby is now a professor in a college. The thing, I guess, the best thing about teaching in that crazy situation was that we all felt very honored to have these little private offices on that hallway at the back of the floor. The worst thing was, of course, having elevator duty and just coping with the conditions there. But in some ways, I think just the fact that the students were so able to thrive in those conditions is a mark of what a Hunter student was all about. I do miss teaching. I'm involved in history. I'm a docent at the New York Historical Society, and I am about to leave this meeting about in a few minutes because I have a history lecture that I had already applied to join. And other than that, I guess my other volunteer work is at the immigration courts, although they're all closed right now. And other than that, just enjoying the cultural life of New York City, where I still live on the Upper West Side, although at the moment I'm in New Jersey. Anyway, it's wonderful to see everybody here, including my colleagues, and stay well, everybody. Bye. Okay.
Sorry about that. Just give me a second here. I was actually trying to get your picture up on the screen, but I'm having a momentary glitch, one of many. Just give me 1 second and hopefully it'll appear.
We can do without the picture, it's okay. Right.
Well, we may have to because I'm having trouble getting it up. Okay.
All members, I had long hair then.
There, wait, hold on, got it. Just give me a second and we'll try, and then. There we go.
Oh dear. Okay.
It's my fault because it's a picture of a picture. So, but anyway, it's great to see you. Thank you for stopping by. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we will be in touch with you. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Now, moving right along, Deborah Levine. I'm just going to try to unmute you here.
I can unmute me.
Yeah, there, you're unmuted.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Hi.
Now, yeah, perfect. Hi, welcome.
Hi.
So just mention your years that you taught and what you taught, and then whatever else you want to talk about.
Okay. I was at Hunter from 1971, seems like forever ago, to 1973. I taught film. I started a film program at Hunter, and art and English. And I loved being at Hunter, partly because I grew up in Paterson, New Jersey, for those of you who know New Jersey. And I went to Eastside High School, which is a far cry from Hunter. And I think I was always a Hunter wannabe kid. So what I loved about working at Hunter, there's so many interesting, creative, and bright students. And I loved it. I also loved working with some teachers, Irv Steinfink in integrated arts, and Helen, of course, and in the music and art department. Since then, what I did when I left Hunter was I pursued, I guess, a high school dream of mine, which was to become a psychoanalyst. How that happened was I had a Latin teacher whose name was Miss Evans. We used to call her Miss Evans because we'd conjugate her, or decline her rather. And one day she said to the five of us who were taking Latin, "What would you like to be when you grew up?" And I said, "I don't know, but I'd like to do something that deals with interpreting dreams." Her response was, "I guess there's not much call these days for Delphic oracles." So I decided that the next best thing was to become a psychoanalyst. So I ended up moving to Toronto. I had family here and I wanted to change because I didn't think I could live anywhere other than Manhattan. I was wrong, although sometimes I wonder. And I got a master's of social work, and then I got a doctorate in social work and did psychoanalytic training. So now I have a private practice and I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Toronto, where not only do I occasionally teach social work, but I taught combining my interest in film and psychoanalysis I taught several courses on psychoanalysis and cinema. And I'm delighted to be here. I noticed a couple of people that I recognize, Judith Matloff, and I think Paula's name came up, and I've seen the two of them over the last 20 years. I'd love to see some of my other students.
Did it work?
Yeah.
Thank you, Deborah. There's somebody who's unmuted. If you could just, that person, mute yourself. But Deborah, didn't you also teach the first film course at Hunter?
Yes. Yeah, I did.
Oh, Vivian, we gotta mute you.
No, okay.
Sorry, Vivian.
Yeah, I noticed somebody asked to get in touch with me. Yes, please. I would love to hear from you. Shall I don't, okay. Yeah, I did teach 7th grade English, I think, Claudia, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure where to write my my email.
You know what? You can write it in the chat bar, but we can also, if anyone wants it, they can contact me at the HCHS at 466lex@gmail.com email.
I'd love to be in touch with people, so please.
And those of you on the Facebook group can private message me as well.
Okay.
So thank you very much for coming. I forgot to mention that you came in all the way from Toronto when I was
where I am right now.
Right. So I'm just going to ask you to mute yourself again, and I think Vivian is here by phone, but your connection is, I can't figure out how to mute you, Vivian. So if you could maybe keep your phone away from any noise for now. Vivian with the long Greek last name. Okay, the next person is not here, but meaning Sue Leung Eichler, our beloved social studies teacher, couldn't be here today, but she wrote something that is so beautiful. Somebody somebody is not, how do we, okay, there we go. There's somebody on the screen right now. I'm not sure of your name, but can you mute yourself? There, guys. We have a mute all thing, but it's not muting everyone. Here, there.
Sorry to interrupt. So people are coming in late, and when they're coming in, for some reason, they're coming in unmuted. That's why. So they are the latecomers. I'm trying to mute them as they come in, but for some reason.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I just pressed mute all and didn't allow the option of people unmuting themselves. I hope I didn't screw something up here. But if we have to, we'll unmute everyone and mute them again. So I have Sue Leung-Eichler, who couldn't be here today, wrote something so beautiful. And in her modest way, don't worry, don't read it. If you don't have to, don't worry, cut it down, edit it. But I can't think of a single word to take out. So it's a little bit long, but it just captures everything. And so I want to share it with you. How many people would believe that a high school could actually exist and thrive on 2 floors of an office building? Yet 466 Lexington Avenue is where I began my teaching career back in 1971. I remember walking into the building each day and going to the designated lines and elevators for Hunter faculty and students amidst the throngs of businessmen. Being young looking, I more than once was turned away from the faculty elevator. My protestations that I was a member of the faculty were lost as the doors closed in my face. Youthfulness didn't serve me well either with the school secretary, Miss De Niro. When I went into her office for memos or train passes for my official class, she would say, "Why aren't you in your classroom? Who's your teacher?" And I would say, "I am the teacher." It took a few weeks before I was recognized as a real teacher and not a student. Cutting off my waist-length hair might have helped. These initial and transitory inconveniences were minor when compared to the unique experiences that ensued and the lifelong memories and friendships that were created. The warren of offices on the 13th and 14th floors was perfect for a new teacher to meet and interact with colleagues from different academic departments. The design of small offices shared by 2 or 3 teachers was conducive to conversations with students as well as with colleagues. I recall fondly the intimate chats or laugh sessions I had with certain students who would sometimes sit on the floor and just talk about their schoolwork or their personal life. While I have good memories of the offices, I also cannot forget the limitations of the office building posing as a school. There is one awful memory I have about the building, the time that smoke from a fire on the Penn Central tracks seeped into the ventilation system. We had to evacuate the entire school and walk down 13 or 14 stairs in dark, smoke-filled staircases. The fire occurred at the worst possible time, lunchtime, when students were all over the school and even outside the building. Somehow, we accounted for everybody's presence, I think. Speaking of fire, I remember the girls' bathroom that was designated for smoking. The 1970s were truly a different time. Faculty members also smoked freely in the offices. Smoking was terribly unhealthy, but not many people were aware. Who can imagine such scenarios today? During my first year of teaching, Hunter College High School suffered and survived a cataclysmic crisis when Jacqueline Wexler, the then president of Hunter College, announced at a school assembly in the spring of 1972 the closing of the campus schools. Shaken and shocked, the faculty and students galvanized into an extraordinary Save Our School campaign. Social studies lessons were turned into letter writing sessions with missives and appeals to local government officials. We marched on City Hall and the governor's city office while busloads of faculty members and upper class students made their way to the senators and assemblymen in Albany. Due to their efforts and the support of well-positioned alumni, the Hunter College campus schools were saved and permanently protected by the New York State Legislature. Another memory is that of the intellectual and pedagogical freedom I had. Ira Marienhoff trusted his teachers and never imposed a curriculum on the department. I can only marvel now on the creativity and experimentation that I was permitted to have in devising curriculum, lessons, and assessments. The school as a whole was constantly evaluating and revising its curriculum, sometimes in response to desires and demands of the students. One innovation was the week-long mini courses that replaced the regular schedule of classes. I had great fun when I offered a course on witchcraft and brought in a real witch to be guest speaker. I remember creating other courses, an elective for the 10th grade on women in American history and the college course on Chinese history. My senior course was the first of many subsequent programs approved by Hunter College for college credit. The class was conducted in seminar format and all the students received college credit at the end of the year. Supplementing our readings were trips to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Broadway show Pacific Overtures. I enjoyed the freedom of the curriculum, but what made each class unique were the students. The girls, and then later the boys, were amazing. They were smart, articulate, creative, and exuberant. They were a joy to teach. I couldn't believe how analytical and insightful these students were, and how they tackled projects like the Ancient Civilizations newspaper and the Medieval Fair with enthusiasm, most of the time. When my friends, who were also teachers, bemoaned their jobs, I could only smile and try not to gloat about my good fortune. I was teaching in the fullest sense of the word, and I was enjoying it. As a new teacher, I was assigned to the 7th and 8th grade classes for several years before I, quote, advanced to the upper grades. Some of my colleagues avoided the younger grades at all costs, but I loved them. The students were also spirited and energetic outside the classroom. I recall the amazing trip to England and France during the spring break of 1973, organized by Jane Greenspan and Joan McCarthy. The excursion was an opportunity to learn and to discover cultures we had studied or never knew. It was the first time I was on an airplane, as was the case for many of the students. I realized that I hated to fly and still do. The girls were particularly excited that they could imbibe wine at dinner per European custom, and many of us had our first taste of horse meat. Not everyone enjoyed the latter. My recollections include going to the theater and having a grand time from our seats in the upper heaven tier of the theater, and lunching at the posh Maxine's after being greeted by a white-gloved maitre d'. The trip to the Versailles Palace took our breath away. After viewing the seemingly endless number of gold objects and lavishly decorated chambers, I only had one thought: no wonder there was a revolution. Closer to home was the trip to Colonial Williamsburg. Diane Wallace and I chaperoned a small group of students to this restoration site as part of the mini course week in 1974, I believe. The girls had conferred upon us a special title, and it came to pass that Auntie Diane and Auntie Sue laughed and learned with them as we visited the different exhibits. What made this trip and the European seminar special were the bonds I was able to establish with the girls that had little to do with academics. We got to know each other as human beings, and adults enjoying the company of teenagers, but they were not ordinary ones. These were Hunter adolescents with their authentic and quirky worldviews, dichotomous blend of confidence and angst, and peculiar but lovable sense of humor. What an extraordinary and fun bunch of young women. In a sense, I grew up with my first group of students. By the time they graduated in 1975 or in 1976, I had also grown, even gotten married, and also left the school in 1976. That was the year when New York City was in the throes of a major financial crisis and my position was cut. Luckily, I was rehired 2 years later when the funds were restored to the school budget. The school had just moved to its current location at 94th Street, but I will still always remember my time at 466 Lexington Avenue. And of course, Ms. Leon Eichler didn't mention, but she became the acting principal in 1998 until 2000, 1998, excuse me, until 2000, and she retired in 2001. And I just couldn't help but share this with you all. Next, we're going to go, oh, I do have some pictures of her, but I'll put those on the screen so we don't hold things up. I'll put them up in a minute. We're going to go, if I can find him, to Campbell Austin, who I really thank for putting up with me as I pushed you to sing the alma mater. And I'm asking you to unmute yourself. Good. And before you speak, let me just see if I have the pictures of Sue, if I can, you know what, if they pop up right away, I'll share them. You know what? Go ahead. You speak, and if I will show them later. Go ahead, Mr. Austin.
Good. Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. It's indeed my pleasure to have taught at Hunter College High School. I still to this day wonder why Helen Feingold hired me after a demo lesson in the, I forgot the number of the room. I think I did back to back and she hired me. I was a neophyte just out of college, and I just was able to do it with God's grace. So I taught music when the school went up to 94th Street. I believe I started the jazz chorus. But while at 466, I did the general music classes and junior chorus. And yeah, that's me on the screen. Still young and dapper. While there at Hunter College High School, when we went to the new building, I was able to start a basketball team, which was my joy as well, doing basketball, coaching, teaching jazz course and teaching the junior course. I retired in 2001, went to Uniondale School District up in Long Island, and I was Director of Art and Music for the district, which was responsible for 8 schools, and I think I had 40 teachers under me and responsible for curriculum and hiring and firing and all the good things that administrators do. I retired from Uniondale in 2009 and moved down to North Carolina in a place called Norlina, which I believe is short for North, N-O, and Carolina, L-I-N-A, N-O-R rather, N-O-R, L-I-N-A, which is right below the border of Virginia off Highway 85. So we live on a about 100-acre farm. I do some farming. I do a lot of growing and gardening and have lots of space, 2 dogs, etc. Lots of sunshine. It's about 85 degrees right now. And presently I'm the choir director and music assistant at a church called Faith Baptist Church in Youngsville, North Carolina. But as I started to say, the greatest joy was teaching wonderful students who I'm very fond of and remember most of their names. And my goal each day was to be one lesson ahead of them. I was not able to compete with their intelligence and the way they were able to absorb information. And I want to say hello to Bob Goodman. He and I used to play basketball together. I think if my mind serves me right, we used to play against the current basketball team, and I think we beat them every year. You can verify that with Bob if you want to. But again, thank you. Thanks for giving me a chance to sing, and thanks to Anne encouraging me to do that.
Anne, you're muted.
Okay, I said thank you, Mr. Austin. Thank you for indulging me and for putting up with all of my calls and messages as I cajoled you and twisted your arm just a little bit to get you to do this. So thank you. You can hear me now, right? Can you all hear me? Just nod. Good. Okay, great. Okay, so next person up is, I'm going to ask Marge Goldsmith to unmute herself. I see you there. Oh, good. Here you are.
Good. Okay. Hello, everybody. And I want to say thank you for putting this together. It's a very, very difficult task, but it seems to be working out just great. And there's a terrific audience, and I'm sure I recognize lots and lots of names. I'm glad everybody has joined in. As I said, I may not know the year that you graduated, but for many of you, I remember where you sat. I started at Hunter in 1966. I got my job. It is, as one person once told me, the best job in the world. And I think that is absolutely true. I got my job I always tell the story that it was because of a subway strike that happened in New York. I was finishing my graduate degree at the University of Pennsylvania, and I had written a letter to Miss Bush, hoping that there might be an opening in the science department. When I heard from the chair of the science department, Emily Boggs, and she invited me to come for an interview. And it was a day, I believe in March, and there was a subway strike in New York, and transportation was at a standstill. But luckily, we lived in the Bronx at the time, and my mother, who was working, had a ride to her office on 32nd Street with a few other people who lived in my building. And it was with a taxi. And just to give you an idea of how long ago that was, I think the ladies paid something like $2 a day for the taxi ride down to from the Bronx to 32nd Street. But luckily on that day of my interview, they were able to squeeze me in. And so I got to the interview. But as it turned out, although 3 people were scheduled, one of the other people wasn't able to show up. And anyhow, I was lucky enough to get that job, which was one of the luckiest days of my life. I remember Bob Goodman, thank you for that picture. I was looking for that picture in the cardboard carton before, but wasn't able to find it. So it was fun to see that again. But moving to 466, well, we did that on very, very short notice. But the kids were terrific. I mean, it was, they took it with great aplomb. And I remember one of the big changes that we had was that the faculty now had private offices or semi-private offices. Toby Brandress was my office mate. And we also had a telephone in the office, which was a major convenience and certainly an improvement from sharing the phone with 5 or 6 other people. I remember we had no specific science lab, so we did lab in the classroom. And I remember the students trying to balance the microscopes on those armchairs. There were a couple of accidents along the way, but I say it's essentially, we did okay with that. I was also very, very happy that with the science education at Hunter, there was still also an emphasis on music and the arts, and that was from the very beginning, and of course I think has gotten even more so as the years have gone on. You all know that I was a student at Hunter, so Hunter has been a major part of my life, and I've been active for many years since I retired in 2007. I've been active for many years in the Alumni Association, helping to plan events. We've done a lot of interesting things. Some of the highlights were museum trips for alums, seeing special exhibits, and Susan Meeker was very generous with her time in being a docent for us for several of the trips that we made to the New York Historical Society. The students at Hunter are thousands of a kind. There is a special joy, a special hunger for learning to the students at Hunter. It was always a pleasure to be in the classroom. I remember every September, I used to have this dream before we started that this year the students are going to be much, much smarter than I am. And in fact, the students are probably a lot smarter than I am, but they never let me know it. And we're always very excited. And it was wonderful that I had such a good time in the classroom and enjoyed sharing whatever knowledge I had and learning from the students. I was also very happy that there was a great degree of academic freedom. Of course, I taught biology. I taught 7th grade science. I taught 8th grade for a couple of years. But I also remember that it was a wonderful time when we were able to choose electives and suggest that electives be part of the program. And I remember an elective in genetics and one called selected topics in biology that were also, and over the years, there were quite a few, and that whole elective program has continued and is there today, obviously, as many of you know, and many of you were able to take advantage of that. Another highlight in 466 and throughout were the great relationships with the students. The students, perhaps for lack of a better space, used to come into the teachers' offices, sit on the floor, have lunch, and chat and got to know students in many ways about that. And also wonderful relationships with faculty. We used to have what we called capers. We would go to museums or do things after school. We have also started an organization when I retired with Susan Meeker and Stacy Nicholas. We started an organization which was called the Senior Tea. And every year, of course, named for two reasons, but one of them was kind of in honor of an old Hunter tradition, and that was the tea that the graduating seniors had when the school was all female. But anyhow, we were able to get together at someone's home once a year, and we have about 15 to 20 retired faculty coming to that and joining it. I've been happily retired in New York since 2007. I'm kind of a tourist in New York. I don't travel internationally as much as I thought I would. My husband was still working and somehow all of that never happened. But I love being a tourist in New York, going to all kinds of cultural events and all kinds of different activities in the city. We have, my son is married. We have two wonderful grandchildren. Molly is 14 and Ethan is 8, and they are doing very well at school and of course have been Zooming. So I want to say hats off to any of my colleagues and friends who are doing Zoom school. I know that Toby and Bob are doing that. It's amazing, not easy at all. And thank you for everything that you're doing. And thanks to this wonderful audience. Glad to see everybody. And Hunter is alive and thriving and well, and all of you stay well. Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Marge. We are next I'm going to ask Betty Braun Kleinfeld to unmute herself. Betty, are you there? And she is here, but I'm asking, there we go. Okay, I'm going to mute myself, and Betty Braun Kleinfeld. So just tell us what you taught in the years you taught. Sorry, Betty, you know what? You're still muted. The microphone,
Okay,
icon, there we go.
you got it? Okay. Hi, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you, long distance, but it's fine anyway. I started in 73, 74, my first year. And the day I came in, which was sometime in October, I thought I died and went to heaven. Everybody's been telling me that not to choose teaching, not to go to public schools, not to do what I set out to do. But I found myself in 466 surrounded by amazing young women, amazing. And I just want to say that everything that Sue Eichler wrote is really my story as well. Whatever high school I went to, can you hear me now? There it is. Anyway, I just want to also indicate that it wasn't just what my relationship with the students it's what the students also gave to me. They were independent thinkers from day one. The class was always informal. They had a say in what we were studying. And when I saw them planning all kinds of shows, I was so jealous that I didn't have what they had in high school, even though I was there with them. I just want to remind everyone, especially the young women who are visiting here, of how much we loved you also. We absolutely loved you, and we developed all kinds of courses for you and trips. We didn't care where the school was. Basically, New York was our classroom, and we went wherever we felt like going. Our social studies curriculum just left open, and gave us many ideas on how to go, how to teach. I'm looking at the picture and I'm smiling, but I really was very happy, I have to tell you. I just want to say that one of the nicest things was students teachers. Many courses were wonderful times where I went and I studied under my students. They taught me dance, they taught me literature. They came to my class and I taught a course on Are you ready for this? The 1973 war, which was then, being fought. So simply, this was a great experience for me. I left at the end of the year. I was a substitute teacher anyway, but I came back in 78 and then finally retired in 2012 with very fond memories. And I love seeing you all here, teachers as well as all the students. I have two grandsons who I spend time with and I love, adore. But I'm still thinking of everything that I learned, with Ira Marinhoff and Susan Meeker, who just basically, allowed me the freedom to teach in the classroom and to do what we want to do. So that's it, folks.
You very, very much, Betty. And I'm going to just ask you to also mute yourself again as we move on. Thank you. And thanks for joining us last weekend as we practiced Zooming. I'm going to ask Maureen Kirby Sanders to unmute herself. Maureen, do you hear me? There.
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect.
Okay, I think I'm
There you
unmuted. Hello, everybody. It really is wonderful to be here, and it's so terrific to hear all your stories. I was at Hunter from 1970 until 1977, and I came from Stuyvesant, which was all boys, and I went to Hunter, which was all girls, and that was really such a big change for me. I taught French at Hunter. I did teach Latin as well, but only for a short time. And, I had a wonderful experience teaching. My battery's getting low, sorry. I had a wonderful experience teaching French to Hunter girls. I taught French 3 and French 4 basically, and they gave me certainly as much as I gave them. It was a fabulous experience. They were brilliant girls, and I thought many times they were a lot smarter than I was, but at least I knew a little bit more French than they did. I loved teaching many courses. I loved doing cooking with the girls. I do remember that. I did that with a number of students, and we had a lot of fun doing that. And I left in 1977, and I went on to other things. I did an MBA, and then I was pregnant with my first child when I left Hunter, and then we adopted a second. They're all grown now in their 40s, and one is 42 and one is 36, and I have 4 grandchildren. And then I ultimately went back to teaching. I taught we moved to Connecticut, and I taught at New Canaan Country School for 18 years and retired in 2014. I also started teaching Spanish. And so I hadn't really had any university training in Spanish, but I spent every summer going to a different Spanish speaking country, living with a family and studying. And so that's how I acquired my Spanish. So French is really my first love, though, and it's the language that is the foreign language that's really deepest in me. And I still speak it. I still have, I have a lot of contacts in French. I'm a member of the Alliance Française up here in Connecticut. And so I've been retired since 2014, and happily so. I do a lot of traveling, and it's been great. So I'm very grateful for my years at Hunter, and it's so nice to communicate with you all again. It really is wonderful to reconnect. Thanks.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you very much. And thanks also for Maureen just went out and reached out to Ann Eberlin, who I don't think made it on. If she did, if she could message us, that would be great. But now she's back in the loop anyway. She lives in Wake Forest, North Carolina. So next, actually, I am one person who couldn't be here today is Adrienne Barnhart, the math teacher. I was in her class in 9th grade, I want to say. And I am going to read to you. She wrote a beautiful message to everyone, and I'm going to read that to you now. And this is her old picture. I do have a couple of newer ones. It's hard for me to walk and chew gum at the same time, but I'll try after I read this message from her. Greetings to my fellow alums and former colleagues. I graduated Hunter High in June 1953 and was so fortunate to return in September 1957 to teach in the mathematics department. Not only was it the school I loved, but I was fortunate to be so warmly welcomed by my former teachers with whom I formed lifelong relationships. They supported and treated me like a beloved daughter, and a few who had taught my teachers, Miriam Burstein and Dorothy Geddes, when they were high school students, referred to me as a granddaughter. They were close relationships that I treasured. Fellow alums, I well understand your interest in connecting with your former teachers and wish you a wonderful gathering today. In 1978, Maureen, I just have to ask you here to, there we go. In 1978, I was asked to serve as acting department chair for the 1978-79 school year when Dr. Harry Ruderman went on a sabbatical leave. He had been my supervising teacher when I student taught at Bronx High School of Science and took quite an interest in Hunter High when I declined an offer to teach at Bronx Science following student teaching and instead went to Hunter. He then applied for the position of Hunter College High School math chair the year after I arrived at Hunter. And we worked closely until he retired in 1982 and maintained our close friendship until his death in 1994. While I had thought that I would always want to remain a classroom teacher, being acting chair with Dr. Ruderman's blessing to do whatever I deemed necessary changed my mind. I more keenly appreciated the opportunities that being chair gave me to lead the department in future developments we thought beneficial. As a result, I applied and was appointed tenured department chair starting September 1982 and served in that position until I retired in September 1991. I hope, as I hear in my mind the words we sing to our alma mater, that I, quote, served her well, as I surely loved her well and still do. In retirement, I've delighted in being able to spend more time with my family and friends, continue traveling, volunteer my services to the finance committee at my church, a national, state, and city landmark, and to be in later years a caregiver for my parents and for my beloved husband of over 57 years who died 4 years ago. I loved Hunter High for many reasons, and there's one that especially touches my heart. It gave me, an only child, a dear sister friend. We met when we both arrived at Hunter in September 1949 and are as close today, 70 plus years later, as ever, although I still live in the Throgs Neck area of the Bronx, and she now lives near Raleigh, North Carolina. Just another note, during our time together at 466, I gave a 3-day mini course on Scandinavia. I wonder if any of you attended and remember. My roots on my father's side are in Sweden, where both of his parents were born. I am sending a picture taken last summer in 2019 of me with my third cousin Lars in Stockholm, where he lives. It's as beautiful a city as ever. And I am going to try to get that picture up on my screen. This is actually a picture of Mrs. Barnhart with some family members. This is not Lars, but these are younger family members. I'm just gonna stop the screen share for one moment so that I can try to pull up the picture from Scandinavia. Here we go. Here is Mrs. Barnhart with her cousin. And there we go. Okay, there you have it. Now, but Mrs. Barnhart, I really thank for sharing her words. We happen to be lucky enough to have other members of the math department here with us. We have, and let me just get up next, Sheila Krylov. And I'm just going to ask you to unmute yourself, Sheila. Oh, you're unmuted. Perfect.
And before she starts, Mr. Steinfink had asked in the chat if he could go shortly because he's got to leave. So I just want to make sure. I don't want you to
Oh,
miss.
no, there go our breakout sessions. People were clamoring to be with you guys in a smaller session, and there go our people. But shall we go to Mr. Steinfink right after you? Or is that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
See you soon, guys.
So you go ahead and I will get ready to unmute Mr. Stein. Oh, we're going to go to him first? Okay, fine. Okay. I'm asking you to unmute yourself, Mr. Steinfink. There we go. Just say something because
Hello,
you're unmuted.
everybody.
And Sheila,
Hello.
if you could just mute.
Sorry to.
Sheila, could you just mute yourself?
Yes, hi. Do you hear me?
You're unmuted.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good.
And will everyone else do me a favor? If you just came in, you may be unmuted. Just make sure that you're muted so we don't have background noise. It's all yours. Take it away.
Okay, old social studies teacher from 1970 to 2001. My strongest memories really were connected with things that are going on right now in the world. When we were in the late 60s, early 70s, going through really strange, difficult period of time, it seems weird to me that this is repeating itself. I'm leaving because I have a son who's graduating high school today. And marvelous that I am able to have a young son like this, who's a wonderful guy. But I want to talk to you about my memories at Hunter, and I think of constituent assemblies. I think about how the students demanded during this radical period in our history an equal voice in determining their course of study. It was remarkable. They were so empowered, self-empowered, and they were manifesting the truths of the lessons that all of us were trying to teach in those days. And I assume they continue to become active members of their community and work towards achieving the goals that we'd like to see. The students were fantastic. It was just so wonderful to have open exchanges, feeling free to talk about stuff that was frequently very difficult and very moving and very rewarding. I love that I could teach a variety of subjects, from film and American history to minority groups in America. And eventually I did a course in Eastern religions that also became a college level course, and Hunter gave the students college credit for that course. It was a remarkable experience for me, and I hope for most of my students. It's wonderful to see you all. It's really nice. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry I have to leave, but graduation calls me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Steinfink. Thanks for making time for us. And your students will be very disappointed not to have you in the breakout sessions, but we will adapt as we did at 466. And congratulations to you and your family.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, Sheila, I'm going to unshare my screen, and I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. There, we hear you. And Irv, do you mind muting yourself?
Yep.
You could. And anyone who's joined the meeting in the last couple of minutes, if you don't mind muting yourself, make sure that you're muted so we don't have background noise. Okay, there we go. Sheila Krylov, a math teacher.
Hi, everybody. Possibly the only one still teaching at Hunter. This has been one of the best parts of my life. My story goes back to when I was in graduate school. I was in a PhD program in mathematics, and about second year, I realized that I was enjoying my teaching fellowship much more than I was enjoying my classes in complex analysis. And I started putting out feelers to schools in New York City, to the gifted schools, maybe because I never was eligible to take the Hunter test, but I did go to Bronx Science. And it had been like a life-changing event for me. It was the first time in my life where it was cool to be with smart kids, to be smart, to be able to, let's just say to be smart and be surrounded by smart people. And as I sent my resume to all these places, and as I looked just like the students that I was teaching at the time, I was just very lucky to get the job at Hunter. It was a fluke that I got the job. It was 1973. And in the small world that it sometimes is, the chairman of the math department at that time was Harry Ruderman. And his wife had been my high school calculus teacher. And she happened to walk by and see my resume sitting on his desk. And she said, "You have to interview Sheila." And I got the interview and I got the job. And it was, for me at first, it was just, I was so lucky. I was very willing to leave graduate school and come back to New York and start teaching. I was at first a little bit anxious about teaching in an all-girls school, but I quickly adjusted, and just meeting the students and the caliber of the students and the caliber of the discussions, and maybe because I was not much older than the students I was teaching, the casual conversations. I mean, we were wearing the same clothes, we were listening to the same music. We would stay after school and we would chat about anything and everything, and not just about math. Yes, the freedom of curriculum, and the offices were very special. I mean, yes, it was 2 floors of an office building, and yes, fire drills were a challenge, running down 14 flights of stairs and occasionally walking up them at the end. I, like Miss Eichler, was not always allowed on the faculty elevator, but I loved the job. And I left after, when I was expecting my first son in 1985. I decided that I could not be both the Hunter teacher I wanted to be and the mother to my son that I wanted to be. So I took a nice break. I was lucky enough to be able to afford to do that. I stayed home with my kids until my younger son was in 5th grade, when Mark Nadell and Richard Clutch were both retiring. And I said, this is my chance to come back. And I went through tenure a second time, maybe the only teacher at Hunter to have gone through the tenure process twice. And tenure is a 5-year process at Hunter. But I love the school. I love the traditions. My son was actually a student at Hunter. My older son was a student at Hunter when I came back. It was mortifying for him to have his mother in the school. It was, "Mom, can't you teach at Forest Hills High School? You'll be able to walk to school." And I said, "But Jonathan, I won't teach kids like you. And I do need to, if I can, go back to Hunter." It was very much a part of my life. And I've been back since 1999. And every so often I think, gee, it might be time to retire. And then I have a conversation with a couple of Hunter kids and I say, I got another year in me. I got another year in me. As Marge acknowledged, the transition to remote learning has been possibly the greatest challenge in my teaching career, but we're managing. And so Zoom is now my good friend. And a few memories that I'll share, and then I'll let somebody else speak. I certainly welcome the openness of students and their willingness to share creative ways of solving problems that I never saw before, ways that, well, my new classroom is 408. We now call them 408 approaches to problem solving. I survived several of those budget cuts. I never lost my job, but I came very close several times. I remember one of the students in my very first class coming up to me very frankly saying, "Ms. Krylov, it's very confusing. You're trying to be both friendly and firm and it's not working for me." but I am who I am, and it did work. I remember the big shows. This one's for Millie Fell. I remember the year the seniors decided to portray us as the trigonometric twins. I remember the students who couldn't tell us apart, but that was all part of the fun. And I remember going out for lunch, occasionally students getting me lunch. I love this frozen yogurt topped with strawberries and nuts. And it was one of the students who's here, one of the former students who's here, who often got me my lunch. And I remember my math team very well. Math team had been part of my life starting in middle school. And when I came to Hunter, there was a high school math team, but not much. And I remember building it into what it is now, which is basically a community of people who love solving problems and really exploring math beyond the classroom. And I guess I've been a math team coach for most of my career. When I started, what I loved is that schedules were not as tight as they are now. Not everyone didn't scatter when school was over. Math team competitions were held at different schools. So I remember traveling with my math team to Brooklyn Tech, to Stuyvesant, to St. Anne's, and then hanging out afterwards, sometimes going for ice cream and walking on the promenade in Brooklyn. And just that, those were the very special times. And so I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to see so many familiar names. And if I didn't respond to your chat, the chat just kept flying too fast. Please understand I'm saying hi, and I'm going to let somebody else speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Speaking of trigonometry twins, I was going to ask Millie Rosenstock Bell to unmute herself, and there we go. You should be unmuted right now, Millie.
Yes, okay, hi. Thank you for letting me join in, and again, congratulations to you for doing this incredible thing. It is so unbelievable to me to see everyone, because I have been away from Hunter for so long, but I'll tell you my quick Hunter story. I started as a substitute teacher at Hunter and then got hired in 1975. Harry Ruderman was the chairman. I was Miss Rosenstock. This was, and I guess I started at, that's right, 23 years old. I started, I guess, the second semester in 74, and then I really taught 5 full years in 75 to 79, alongside Sheila Krylov. We haven't seen each other for a few years. And alongside Adrienne Barnhart and Mary Fiore and other people who I can't, recall right now. I guess the recurrent theme about Hunter is how incredible the kids were. I was blown away. They were so smart, so inspiring, so fun to be with. So inspiring that after 5 years of teaching there, I taught from 1975 to 1979. I was inspired to take courses at Hunter College at night, thinking, maybe I'll also teach biology. Maybe I'll do something else. And I ended up applying to medical school. Some of the, also I couldn't respond to some of the students. Yes, I did apply to medical school, and in 1979, I was accepted to medical school at the same time that I got tenure at Hunter. What a choice. Harry Ruderman at the time said, "How do you want to take care of sick people all your life?" Well, I got accepted to Stony Brook Medical School, and my first memory when I got to medical school is being greeted by Harriet Ausis and her husband. Gracious and welcoming to me that it was really a wonderful way to start my life there as a medical student. I ended up applying and getting accepted to a residency in ophthalmology at NYU, where I trained, and then ended up opening my own practice in Brooklyn. It started out in Brighton Beach, and then it ended up in Midwood. It's now in Midwood. It's called Brighton Eye Associates. And the reason it's Brighton Eye Associates is because that's where we started, Brighton. in Brighton Beach. What else can I tell you? So along the way, in my 4th year, I had my first child. He was born in my 4th year of medical school. He's now a therapist, and he has a child, and he's married, and he has a child. So I have a grandson who's 2.5 years old, who is the joy of our life, and we do whatever we can to take care of him. We've been taking care of him at least 1-2 days a week since he was born. I'm in full practice. I haven't thought about retiring, although I am thinking about an exit strategy. I have a son, a middle son, who's now an ophthalmology resident in Dallas at UT Southwestern, and he kind of followed my course in doing he graduated from NYU in music, and then realized that he was not going to be a rock star. So he one day came to me and said, I want to be a doctor. And I said, really? Become my technician, take some courses. So he took courses, and he eventually also got into medical school, and he's going to be an ophthalmologist. And then I have a daughter who got married last year. She got an MSW, was going to be a therapist, realized she didn't really love therapy as much as she loved teaching. So she's now also doing a second master's at the Bank Street School, and she teaches at the Stephen Gaynor School in Manhattan, which is a very good school for kids with all kinds of learning problems. And she's phenomenal with preschool kids. So she's teaching 4 and 5 years old. And talk about the challenges of teaching on Zoom. Think about teaching 4-year-olds on Zoom who have learning disabilities and attention span problems. So that's my story. And Hunter was really my inspiration for the rest of my life because of the kids, the students who I would meet everywhere in all phases of life. I've kept in touch with Ruth Kevis. Great story. A couple of weeks ago on Zoom, I was reading Torah at another synagogue, and Freddie Brooks, who was in one of my classes, chatted with me and said, did you ever teach at Hunter? Yes. So, and then just today, as I got on Zoom, one of my colleagues in ophthalmology, Monica DeWick, said, oh my God, so nice to see you. She was a student and left Hunter before I came on as a teacher. So I have very fond memories. And I always love teaching. I love teaching the students there, and I love teaching now. And I continue teaching. I'm teaching at NYU, and this time I'm teaching in the operating room, teaching residents how to do cataract surgery. So that's my story. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks for joining and for your enthusiasm. You know what? I just want to, I showed your picture, but I found a picture that Sue Leong Eichler sent me recently with her very handsome son, and I just want to share it with everyone because I didn't have it up before. So just so you can take a look, and then in a moment we're going to hear from Helen Feingold Friedman. I think Sue Leong Eichler might still have problems at the elevators if she were to come back. She doesn't look much older. So Helen, you're there. I think you're unmuted.
I hope so. Thank you.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. It is just absolutely thrilling to see you all. I recognize so many names. I graduated from Hunter in 1963 and was sure of two things. I was never going into music, and I was never going to teach. And 5 years later, I joined the faculty at Hunter High School, 1968, and taught till 1979. The best things, as you've heard over and over again about teaching at Hunter, were you, the students. Your eagerness to learn and willingness to try out new curriculum ideas with me spurred me to continue to learn, which is a real gift that you gave me. I left Hunter when our son was born, and when he started school, I taught at Dalton, was a music consultant at the Spence School, and an arts manager at Bridge Records. Oh my, the ravages of age. Until COVID-19, my husband and I were avid concert goers. This reunion, bringing together former students, former colleagues, and indeed my own 7A4 homeroom teacher, Mrs. Morello, is an antidote to cynicism and despair. After so many years, it is heartwarming to know how much we still mean to each other. And I saw Tiana Wimmer's name pop up, which prompts me to tell you how deeply grateful I was to have the support of parents. Tiana's parents organized a benefit concert so that we could raise scholarship money for students to go on the trip to Poland in 1976, even though their daughter wasn't going. So my thanks to Harry Wimmer and the late Shirley Givens and all the other parents who supported the music and art department. I wish all of you well and offer my sincere thanks to Ann Starr for organizing this special, memorable reunion. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you, Helen. And actually, thank you for what you did with getting in touch with teachers and giving them a little nudge to join. You just really, it's been delightful connecting with you as we've been planning this. Now, I was going to ask Jerry Gelormini Jamola to unmute herself. If I'm trying to, Jerry, I see you there. I'm asking if you can unmute yourself, that would be great. There we go, perfect. Nope, you're still, hold on one second, the microphone icon, there, perfect. Say something, perfect.
Okay, I'd like to echo Marge Goldsmith's statement of gratitude to you and for making this event possible. Thank you so much. My Hunter College High School story started 54 years ago when I student taught in the speech department with Pauline Schlesinger. After receiving my master's degree from Temple University, I began full-time teaching in 1967 with other newcomers, John Hudson, Ellie Renfield, Diane Hockman. I hope some of you alums remember them. At that time, a public speaking course was required in 12th grade. If students received an A, they were exempt from taking the required Hunter College public speaking course. And I feel as though I have a connection with so many of you because I taught most of the public speaking courses, if not all of them. I don't remember exactly. Over the years, the speech department became the CT department, Communications and Theater, then English and CT. And in 1988, I became the assistant principal of administration, originally under Maria Lofrumento. And I served in that capacity for a little bit more than 10 years until my retirement after 30 years at Hunter. I retired in 1998. My husband and I moved to the West Coast of Florida, where I taught adults religious education at my local church. And then almost 4 years ago, I moved here in the Woodlands, Texas, north of Houston, because my family settled here and in Dallas. I'm excited today not only to see so many alums, but also to revisit my colleagues who I haven't seen in over 20 years. So, Anne, thank you again.
Thank you, Jerry, so much. You've been just great working with your sister's iPad and connecting with us. I'm just going to ask you to mute yourself now as I ask Janice to unmute herself. Janice Warner, there. I think you're unmuted, right? Yes. No.
Oh, and Jerry Gelormini, my friend, and seeing so many of you again. I started at Hunter, I was 22 years old, but my story with Hunter started much earlier. My big sister went to Hunter and her friend was Margie. I still call her Margie, nobody does. I've known Margie since I was 11 because Judy, her friend, and Margie used to escort me on the train because I went to school down near Union Square. So I knew Margie all those years, and graduated from college, and about a year later, I was waiting for a friend outside Hunter on 68th Street to go for lunch, and I ran into Margie, and she said, "Why don't you apply to teach?" And I thought, come on, that's a dream. That's what I've always wanted to do. I went upstairs to meet my friend, and there was Miriam Burstein, who thought I was my sister. And we looked alike. And she said, "By the way, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm not a work English teacher." She said, "Well, you know what? Everybody is marching, just like we're marching today. But we didn't have coronavirus, and it was the Vietnam War. And what was happening was the Vietnam War and the protests and the students, but to keep things going, they needed a substitute teacher in English. And I would go with my poems that I had prepared to sub. And I subbed, and I got a job at Hunter, which I think I manifested. That was my dream job through college. And went away from my 22 years old, went away from my vacation, came back all ready to go to 68th Street. When I saw in the New York Times, no 68th Street, 46th Street. I didn't care. I was at Hunter. And it was like putting on good, comfortable shoes. I loved it. I already knew some of the teachers. The kids were not, I knew they were brilliant, but I had seen brilliance. I wasn't one of them myself, but I knew you. I knew you, and I was happy with you. And I can't tell you, 22, 23 years old, couldn't believe I was getting paid to do this, paid to go in and to teach. The freedom with the curriculum. I think I was there a couple of years, and I decided that my 10th grade class needed to read Lady Chatterley's Lover. What do you know at 22? I had the school bought the books. We were reading them and talking about it. It was not much for my kids. They didn't think it was such sexual outrage. And I walked past Maria Loframento's office. She was our principal, and she was so good to me. And I heard a parent in there complaining about Lady Chatterley's Lover. I never knew anybody complained. Maria Loframento never said anything to me. And out of her office, I heard her say, "If Miss Hodges thinks that that is a novel that they should read, then that is a novel they should read." She never said a word to me. The freedom of with the curriculum spoiled me. Having those offices all together gave me a family. We ate together. We became, Toby Brandress and I were buddies for years. And we all would, we would go, you remember Sabaros? It was new. That was a new thing. And we would go across to the new Sabaros across the street to eat. I remember I took it in, I was teaching Chaucer. I love Chaucer. And I told the kids about it. And I told them, 10th grade again, if you buy this book, Canterbury Tales, if you don't like it, I'll buy it back. I didn't have to buy one book back. And the next year, the school bought it for me to put into the curriculum. And Mystery and Miracle Plays, Everyman, we were working on that, and I took it into my mind. Let's go up to Saint John the Divine and do Everyman in one of the chapels, and we'll film it. And the school sent along an AV guy, and I don't know whatever happened to it, but we did that. So many things. There were not a lot of Black teachers and faculty when I was there. There still isn't. Irene Dabney became an aunt. She was in the counseling department. Sandy Miley and I took a bunch of Black, the school paid for it, flew us down to Charleston, and we went on a Black Heritage tour and flew back up. Campbell Austin in the music department were going to Dakar, Senegal, and I got to be one of the chaperones on that trip. It was fantastic. My daughter was born while I was there, and I used to bring her to school, and she could crawl around, and it didn't matter where up and down the hall she crawled into other people's classrooms. The kids babysat with her, and now she's chairman of history at Sidwell in the middle school, and she's impressed. Yeah, they've got a lot of people from Washington, D.C., from the feds, but she was used to having Lin-Manuel Miranda around, and Cynthia Nixon, who wanted to see her when she was born, and Elena Kagan had been my student, and I've been showing her off for years. And the best doctor I ever had in my life, Beth Shaw Lesnick, I had her in the 7th grade.
That's what.
And she saved my life, and diagnosed cancer and brought me all the way through. And here I sit today. And her daughter is my granddaughter, because I taught her too when I was at Riverdale Country School. I loved, Hunter was my life. I taught at Dalton for a while, and I taught at Riverdale Country School for a while, and they are fine schools, but Hunter's home. I'm like Dorothy from the Wither, there's no place like home. So when I retired from Riverdale, and my husband had died, and I decided the good thing for me to do was to go back home. So for several years, I subbed at Hunter, and it was wonderful for me. And I thank you all, and I thank you it will always be a major part of my life, and I thank you. 1970 to 2001.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you so much. I think Stacy Nicholas is here, and I also think she knows how to unmute herself. I'm under the impression she's.
Yes.
So
Can
I'm
you
going to
hear
just
me?
ask, yes, and Janice, that was great. You just did it without me asking. So there's Stacy Nicholas, and great. I will mute myself now.
Thank you very much for doing this, Ann. I'm the senior citizen here, and using the technology has really been wonderful today. I was a teacher at Hunter from 1962 to 1995. I was 23 years old when I started, and I got the job when I was studying for my master's at the college. My mentor said to me, in those days we had mentors, why don't you go over to the high school? They have they're looking for a science teacher. So in those days, you just walked down 2 steps, opened the door, and you were in the high school. And I met Mrs. Boggs, and we hit it off right away. And there were other people who also applied, but I got the job. I replaced Ruth Lilienthal, who was on sick leave, and I couldn't get a real line until she retired. But I've seen so many names come up that I remember you as students. I remember that my son, who was born in 1965, was at the Hunter Elementary, and he would come over to the faculty room when he got out like 10 minutes before we did, and Mark Nadell would play with him, and some other students would come by, and those were wonderful memories. When we moved from the building on 68 to 45th Street, it was traumatic. We didn't know really as a faculty how we were going to manage with 2 floors for an entire high school. We also didn't realize we were sharing elevators with executives for one of the biggest advertising companies in the whole world, J. Walter Thompson. And these executives would come all dressed with their suits and their ties and look down at our students who were eating pizza on the elevator and just being normal kids, and they resented us. So, and the neighborhood was terrible. No one has spoken about that, and I just want to remind everybody how bad it was. I had to walk from 42nd to 45th, and there was so many prostitutes in the doorways in the morning, and there was so many people sleeping on the sidewalks. We used to, we would call homeless now, but we called them bums then. And 42nd Street, I used to come cross town on the bus, and every movie house had these X-rated movies with people sleeping in the morning still at so the neighborhood was terrible. Now it's very fancy and wonderful. The building is made out of glass, and the whole neighborhood has become very corporate. And but in those days, it was quite different. And one of the outstanding things I remember was that the famous author Joseph Heller was invited to come and speak to the students about his book Catch-22. Miriam Burstein had invited him, and he said something that I'll never forget. And because then he got a chance to talk to some of the faculty, and he said, "This is a perfect high school. There's no gym and no cafeteria." And we didn't look at it that way, because science lab was awful because we had to get the water from the bathrooms. There were no lab tables. People had to juggle everything, the microscope and everything on their chairs. And I was teaching cooking, and that was a challenge because there was no stoves and no sinks. And so I invented using recipes that only needed electric frying pans. And today, as I meet people in my other life, because since I retired, I became a businesswoman and have been very successful, started about 2 companies. And I am happy to say that everything that I learned at Hunter, I use in my business. And the people that I meet, even in an airport or walking down the street in Manhattan, always remember some of the recipes that I taught them and say they still cook them, and that makes me feel good. I made my best friendships with the other faculty members. Marge Goldsmith talks about going on capers. I'm one that always going on capers with her, but she's a magician because she can think of these wonderful things to do after school. And now when we see each other, since we're both retired, we work together on the senior tea. And it's fun to get all the retired teachers together once a year so we can catch up. And I just want to say a few things about some of the people that aren't with us now that also contributed to your lives. Irv Kisner, who passed away, he was a good friend. Jack McNeil, Lester Rubenstein, and Miriam Burstein and Marie Rosso. We were very involved in things that they brought up in school. And thank you for inviting me today, and hope to see you someday again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Now, we are going to try to bring Ingrid Weckerly on the line. I'm going to try to unmute you, Dr. Weckerly, and if this works, that's great. If it doesn't work, I might try to ask you to call in again. Ingrid, can you hear us? Or can you speak, actually? Okay. Ingrid, I hear you.
I'm not Ingrid Weckerly. I'm Ingrid Keldis, class of 70.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I unmuted the wrong person.
Yes, I'm going to mute myself again.
Thank you so much. Okay, how are we going to find Ingrid Weckerly? Let me just see. Did we rename her here? If I don't see her phone number coming up. Okay.
And we renamed her, but I don't see on the list. I think she might have dropped.
She's on the phone as Dr. Weckerly.
Yes, thank you, whoever said that. And Dr. Weckerly?
Yes, I'm here.
She's here.
Fantastic, that's it. I knew I could count on you. Okay, now Dr. Weckerly does not have a smartphone, so we're just on the phone, but I'm going to show a picture. She and Helen got together recently, so I'm going to just put up a picture of her, a recent picture of her. So you can go ahead, Dr. Weckerly.
All right. And this is a really heartwarming experience today, I think, for all of us. And I cannot thank you, Ann Starr, enough for everything. I graduated from Hunter College in 1957 and taught at Hunter High School that spring semester. And our elevator operator, Jimmy, would not allow me on the elevator because he knew I was a student. He insisted on it so much that to please him, I mounted the steps for the whole semester. And he said, I knew that you were not a faculty member. Anyway, in September of '57, I was given a Fulbright scholarship to the Academy of Music and Performing Arts in Vienna, Austria, at the Palace of Schönbrunn. Had a very beautiful, forever lasting, beautiful year there. I was given a second Fulbright year and graduated from the Academy of Music and Performing Arts. I continue to go to Vienna frequently, am involved with the Fulbright Commission in Vienna, and interview wonderful new candidates going. I was recently in Vienna and gave a modern dance demonstration. I returned to Hunter full-time in 1959. After some time, I was away for 3 years to complete my PhD at Denver University in Colorado. In 1970, after walking barefoot on the Denver campus in demonstrations after the Kent State killing of students, I returned to Hunter as chairman on the 12th floor of 46th Street. I taught in the college at the same time. The Kent State demonstrations continued to my shock in New York City, and a huge sign on the old building, our old building, the castle, and the sign said, "Shit hits the fan." That's where we were. But we were in a different, wonderful world on 46th Street with wonderful students. On my first day on the 13th floor of 46th Street, at my desk, I was at my desk, a man crossed my large window. Now I'm on the 13th floor. I was sure that I had flipped out entirely. It was the window washer, hanging from a rope. We waved at each other. That was my introduction to 46th Street. Now, off-Broadway actors auditioned for our theater productions and used it as a showcase. For the production of Arthur Miller's The Crucible, I scheduled 6 actors per night for several nights in a very deserted 46th Street building late at night. Now, in late afternoons and evenings, what students called ladies of the night settled in between 46th and 42nd Streets on Lexington Avenue. When the elevator man checked on me one night at 10 o'clock, he said, You have been very busy tonight. How can you handle all these men? I said, oh, I'm used to this. I can handle a lot. During the months that we moved to the armory, I slept on the floor of the TV closet to keep the equipment safe. I was also, at that time, adopted by the math department, who were supportive with everything we did, came to every production and anything we did, and I am always thankful for their support and their love. Adrienne Barnhart, Lily Scott, Mary Fiore, and Harry Ruderman. I left Hunter in '91, and now I'm the archivist for the early American theaters of the Perry Mansfield Theater, which is the oldest theater/theater school in the United States. In Carmel, I've been directing and performing, and am co-founder of Colleagues of the Arts, which gives scholarships in music, dance, theater, and graphic arts to young people of professional level, age 11 to 21. Also started a scholarship, quite a different kind, for women who've dropped out of college and after some years are returning, and we've been very supportive of them. At the moment, in mask and gloves, I'm at Safeway here at 6 o'clock in the morning, shopping to keep 4 families afloat. I deliver my bundles with little surprises in each, knock on the doors, and we talk to each other through the glass windows on our cell phones. And I'm also the calling source for 15 people who might need something at this strange time. At the moment, they're waiting for me outside to help put up spaced tables for dining on the streets, and I'm going to bring music to make that more fun. So some of our restaurants have been opening on the street. And I am in touch with many of my wonderful students, some of whom have visited me in Carmel. I'm in New York often, and so I see them there, and my wonderful colleagues. And I love everybody and would love to hear from anybody. And Anne would have my address and phone number. And I would be very happy to welcome anybody here or see them in New York. So as we move along with this, and lots of help, including some Hunter students who are actually out here, the Hunter spirit goes on, and I send my love and thanks to all of you. Ingrid.
Thank you so much, Dr. Weckerly. Just stay there, don't go anywhere, but thank you for joining us with all the challenges of calling in. And now I actually think that we got 2 more people who we couldn't find before. We have, I think, Alan McLeod and Ann Eberlin both here. So I'm thrilled. Dr. McLeod, there you are, fantastic. You're unmuted, I think? No, you're muted. Can you just unmute yourself? Oh, there's an orange microphone. You know what, why don't we do this? Why don't we go to Ann Eberlin, and if you can look at the orange microphone and also just ask for, when it says use internet audio, click on that box, and we'll keep trying. And Anne, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, and then Alan, if you can keep trying on that, and then hopefully by the time Anne.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. That's perfect. Okay.
Alan, it's on the lower left-hand corner. It's orange for
Yes.
the unmuting.
Yes, it's on the lower left hand. I think on a tablet, it might be on the upper left, but oh, there you are, Ann Eberlin.
Right, yeah. I am so happy to be here. I'm Ann Eberlin. I was at Hunter from 1971 until 1989. I am so grateful to the institution, to my fellow teachers, and to the students for the experience that I had at Hunter and for being allowed to grow the way I was allowed to grow. When I heard about this event, I thought about 466 Lex and life right now, and all I could think of was adversity, especially as students. These, no gym, no cafeteria, elevators, all mentioned already. But somehow there was a spirit that cannot be duplicated. And I think we are all very, very lucky to have lived through that. I am grateful to the students who had this wonderful, oh, that's a terrible picture, had this wonderful spirit and made community, even though we did not have community the way other schools do. After leaving Hunter, I went to the wealthy suburbs. They had lots of things, and the biggest shock I had was that the teachers at Hunter, we all had worked so hard. And I never saw teachers work the way we did. And you probably still do, Sheila. The cooperation from the other faculty members, the support from colleagues, especially Linda Eisen and Maria Nadell in the foreign language department for me. I thank Maureen Kirby Sanders for letting me know about this Zoom meeting, and I'm just glad I'm here. Right now, I am in North Carolina, not too far from Campbell, Austin, who talked about where he is now. We are about to move next week from Wake Forest to Raleigh. We are downsizing, and it's a very stressful time in my life. And thank you for this afternoon.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate your coming at the last minute. We did a little bit of Googling around town, and I'm just delighted that we found you. And I see that Alan McLeod has now unmuted himself, so that's great. We're just gonna spotlight you. I think you've unmuted yourself. Wait.
I've unmuted myself. I kept hitting the thing and it was not working. So, but I am unmuted, I think. Oh, so am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, I was a counselor from 1968. And then I became the chairman of the counseling department, and I left in 1988 when I retired. In thinking about it, in terms of what happened with the school being moved, Sue Eichler's letter was a little incorrect in that I was sitting in the back of the auditorium that day, and Bernie Miller was presenting something. And at that point, a student came in and handed me a newspaper, either the Post or the News. And in that newspaper, it said that Hunter High School was closed. And I walked to the front. When Bernie finished, I handed him the paper and he turned sheet white. He had not even been told by the president of Hunter College that they had closed the school. Irving Kisner and myself helped to move the furniture into the new school and did both moved in and moved out when we were there. And I do remember in the first couple days being in the counseling department, and people were lined up outside my office, looked like a bakery. And everybody was coming in crying or upset that they had in fact left the castle. There was a great tradition. It was almost a heredity, and they didn't have it anymore. And I sat down, I didn't know what to do. People were coming in and they were crying, and next person. So I finally said something to Irving Kisner, who I used to share the office with. I said, Irving, what do I tell them? I said, Alan, he said, God knew what to do. When God took the people out of Egypt, he didn't send them right to the promised land. He made them go to the desert for a generation. He said, when these people are in this building long enough, they will see this as home. Just cool it. So I went back and tried to create a holding environment as much as I could. But it also, when I look at it, I started to think about what it really was what was great about the community was the fact that here you had students who loved the place, loved the traditions of the place, really wanted to be a part of it. And you had a faculty. Where else could you get information from God in a situation like that? I mean, it was really one of the special things about Hunter. The other thing is I was the chairman of the faculty along with Orin Takagi at the time when the building started to come apart and everything was happening. And we designed 104 of the mini courses. And I taught one on failure. We all teach what we know best. And it was an exciting time. And that was wonderful. Since I left Hunter, I've continued to work. I too am a psychoanalyst. And I continue to work to this day. I'm an avid gardener. I'm a beekeeper. I'm an amateur mycologist. And the other thing my wife and I have done is a great deal of traveling. And in the course of our travels, I've traveled to the high Arctic 6 times. And 5 years ago, in a private boat, went through the Northwest Passage, in which we set a record that's in the record books. So it was really Hunter that helped me to do a lot of that, because what I did learn from Hunter was be curious, be open, take chances. And I think that I learned that not only from the students, but a lot from the students, but also from my fellow faculty members. So I want to thank them. I want to thank the people who put on this program. This has taken a lot of work, and thank you. And it's been great to be part of the Hunter community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now I am just going to share my screen in a second. Well, actually, Harriet Ofsis, you are here, I believe. You're not. I'm going to read something, but I just want everyone to see you. And I just want to share. There you are, as beautiful as ever.
Thank you.
And as lovely as ever.
Thank you.
And here you are, back in the day. And I'm gonna just go back to you again so everyone can see you. So we're honored to have our beloved librarian, Harriet Ofsis, here with us today. Harriet graduated from Hunter College High School in 1944. She returned to the high school in 1967 to work as Hunter's librarian, and she retired in 1995. Harriet played an extremely important role at Hunter, but during the 1970s, when the school had few resources, she was particularly instrumental in facilitating research. As one colleague said, she was resourceful under the most trying circumstances. Her colleagues variously describe her as, quote, just wonderful, brilliant, beautiful, smiling, and helpful. One wrote, Harriet made the Hunter Library a warm and welcoming place. She always gave generously of her time and expertise, providing enormous help to students and faculty in their research projects. She is a gracious, modest, super bright, elegant role model. Jerry Gellermini Jamola recalls that when she was first preparing to teach the Shakespeare elective, Harriet took her to a private library in Manhattan. And after about 10 to 15 minutes of looking through the book stacks, Jerry saw Harriet, who was never anything but elegant and proper, sitting cross-legged on the dusty, musty library floor, selecting materials for Jerry from the bottommost shelf of the book stacks. Harriet, though always understated, made an impact on students. Felicity Wasser, class of 1976, notes that Harriet inspired her to seek work in libraries. She writes, I still remember you got me started. Barbara Schulgasser Parker, 1972, said, most of my Hunter teachers spoiled me for what came next. Few teachers / professors I had either in college or graduate school matched your talents, passion, dedication, or level of excellence. In addition to thanking her many Hunter teachers, Barbara also writes, thanks to Mrs. Ofsis for being so encouraging and helpful. Andrea Yellen Banchik, class of 1976, writes, Mrs. Ofsis, you made a lifelong impact. 3.5 years ago, there was an article in the New York Daily Post about Harriet entitled, Scarf Knitting Manhattan Woman, age 90, is military's secret weapon. And then it says, she has never fired a gun or even worn a uniform, but you'd be hard pressed to find a bigger US military booster than 90-year-old Harriet Alsis. The Upper East Side grandmother has spent hundreds of hours over the past 9 years knitting scarves for the troops overseas. The military, we were so fortunate to have Harriet as our secret weapon while at Hunter. Thank you, Harriet Alsis. And thank you all 466 faculty. Little did we realize so many years ago what a profound impact you would have upon our lives. Little did we appreciate the bubble that 466 created for experimentation and innovation. You were handed a lemon of a high school and you made lemonade. It could not have been easy, but you made it look that way. We were the spunky, opinionated, quirky girls, and then boys too, who saw the world as our oyster. But you were the people who nurtured that spunkiness, our creativity and intellect. You allowed us to think that we could do anything. You tolerated, even cultivated, our quirkiness. You taught us the value of a life of the mind, and in doing so, you gave us a certain kind of life. And for that, we are eternally grateful. One other huge thank you before we go into breakout sessions, and I'll talk about that in a minute. This get-together would not have been possible without the tireless, uncomplaining work of Eniko Horvath, who works at the Alumni Association. Eniko supposedly works part-time, but for her, part-time means that she works 8 days a week, often late into the night. It's not just her hard work that has made today possible, and this after she pulled together yesterday's pre-union. But Eniko is also brilliant. There have been lots of glitches along the way, but none that Eniko couldn't figure out a way to work around. I'd also like to give a shout out to Claudia Beard and Kinshasa Peterson, who work in the Alumni Association office and are always willing to help out, and moreover, to act as if I'm not a pain in the neck. Without Elise Reisman, the former executive director of the Alumni Association, a 466 reunion would never have been planned. She not only okayed my cockamamie idea, but she went out of her way to facilitate the planning. Jennifer Robb, class of 1973, the president of Hunter College, and her amazing assistant, Jessie Noble Gray, made it possible, and when it's safe to do so, will again make it possible to plan an in-person reunion that's reasonably priced. So I'm going to unmute everyone just for a second so that you can applaud the faculty and all those that I've mentioned.
Before you do that, and just 1 second, we have something else for 1 second. Bear with us, please. Arlene House is going to say a word.
Oh no.
And I'd like to share an image with you, if I can.
Oh no.
Arlene?
On behalf of everyone who shared the Hunter 466 Lexington Avenue experience, I want to thank my classmate and dear friend Anne for the idea to have this reunion and all her hard work making this event happen. When Anne first mentioned the idea to bring everyone who had the unique 466 Lexington experience together, I thought it was a fantastic idea, but had no idea how much work it would involve. But Anne worked tirelessly to make this event happen in a meaningful way, and even with the reunion being postponed, figured out a way to pull it off. In addition to reunions being postponed, Anne has had to overcome so many obstacles along the way, diplomatically dealing with very opinionated Hunter classmates who had all kinds of ideas about how the reunion should take place, and even dealing with having some of her marketing posts pulled down on the Hunter Facebook group. But she smiled and worked through it all. Yes, this is Hunter. And who would have thought to contact all our former teachers, but Anne has contacted each and every one of them that were available and figured out how to have them all join us today. But I have to say that even if we were not available to get together in person or to join together today in Zoom, Anne's work was a success. I love the way over the past year leading up to this event, the 466 Lexington Avenue Facebook group joined us all together. Anne was able to get us to go into our old photo albums, dig through our attics, and find old copies of annals to dig up memories and share with each other. We even debated the existence of the Knish lady, and it certainly helped me get through this difficult time. Anne also organized a number of virtual events leading up to today, including interviews of some of our alumni authors. So let us all raise our virtual glasses to Anne. Thank you, Anne, from all of us. For bringing us today.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay!
Yay!
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Yay.
That was wonderful,
Bravo.
wonderful, fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Arlene.
Thank you.
You can't see the tears because I'm here, but that beautiful, thank you. And I'd like everyone to give a huge cheer for our faculty. You know, thank you. You see, you've stuck with us all these years and had a lasting impact. So, and we're going to say goodbye to our Facebook viewers now, because we're going to make do with these breakout sessions, such as they are. We'll see how they work.